Hello, good evening. You're watching Times Now. My name is Pranesh Roy. When your voice is stifled, viewers, Times Now fights your fight. Just like we did for the victim of Air India horror. Times Now led a sustained campaign that led to the arrest of the man who allegedly urinated on a woman on board an Air India flight and also punished the cover-up of the airline. Today, in a massive Times Now impact, Shankar Mishra has been arrested and the crew of the plane has been called in for questioning by the Delhi police. So where was Shankar Mishra hiding after the FIR was lodged? The police say that he was holed up with a friend in Bengaluru. His mobile phone location gave it away. Now look at these two pictures of Shankar Mishra. One is from his social media page and the other is after he was arrested. It appears that he tried to change his look, wear glasses, shave off his beard so that he can get away. Times Now had confronted the alleged pervert Shankar Mishra, where he dodged Times Now's questions and walked away. Here is what happened.
शंकर क्यों किया आपने साहब? सर ये क्यों किया आपने साहब? शंकर क्यों? शंकर जी क्यों किया? क्या कहना है आपको? शंकर will you apologize? शंकर क्यों किया? शंकर will you apologize for that? क्यों किया शंकर? शंकर क्यों किया इसने? Will you apologize for this? शंकर ये घिनौना अपराध क्यों किया शंकर? शंकर क्या कहेंगे इस पर?
In fact, after Times Now's sustained campaign demanding accountability, Air India's alleged flasher has finally been arrested. But can the airlines get away? Remember, in a complaint, the woman had stated that after Shankar Mishra urinated and flashed her, the crew tried to cover up the assault. She alleged that the crew asked her to return to a damp, urine-soaked seat and even tried to force her to settle the issue. In fact, Times Now is the only channel to get you the testimony of the eyewitness, a man who was sitting next to Shankar Mishra and saw everything as it happened. He has corroborated the claims of the victim. This is what he said.
Sir, anything regarding the entire incident?
No. Sir, what will you be asked? Are you the co-pilot?
Sir, आप कुछ कहना चाहेंगे sir?
Sir, are you the co-pilot? Were you apprised of the matter?
Did you co-pilot or the crew member? Sir, what exactly? So, sir, you guys didn't fulfill your duty. You didn't ensure the safety and comfort of the.
Sir, you also vetoed this thing that she wanted to move to another seat. You did not allow her.
Sir, anything you want to say? Are you the co-pilot or the crew?
The incident happened. It happened post-lunch. The reason I was upset was a lot of standard operating procedures was not followed. I understand the business class was full, but there were 4 empty seats in the first. But they could not take a call to give her a fresh seat. They kept blanket on her seat, which was smelling of urine, and they sprayed. And close to after 2 hours, they gave her a crew seat when one of the crew finished resting. See, I didn't feel he came drunk on board, but he had 4 stiff drinks over like maybe a 45 minutes. Lunch, and when in the process of conversation, you could say that he was incoherent. So that's why I kind of gently alerted the crew. She's a very soft-spoken lady. She's a very decent lady, and she was traumatized. So she was not one of those person who was shouting or doing that. And partly that is why it did not become a big tamasha in the flight. Absolutely. Because I was angry, and I was angry because nobody took the accountability,
Absolutely.
And in this flight, the chief air hostess or the commander should have taken the call, and should have taken her away from the business class, and would never let her interact with him. And everybody knew no action was taken.
Now, amid all the outrage and anger, the Civil Aviation Minister has promised swift action against the airline.
जो उसमें जो कार्रवाई हो रही है वो कार्रवाई समाप्त होते ही उसका एक्शन भी तीव्र गति से लिया जाएगा।
मेरा का शुभारंभ देरी से हो रहा है क्या, कुछ कारण है?
देरी से नहीं हो रहा।
Let's quickly open this up. Captain Sanjay Karve is an aviation expert. Amir Singh Pasreech, aviation lawyer. Swapnil Kothari, senior advocate. Advaita Kala is an author. Shailesh Gandhi, former CIC, prominent citizen voice. And Dr. Sanjeev Bagai completes the panel. Good evening to all of you. Advaita Kala, let me begin by asking you, if what the woman went through was not enough, look at the reality of what the crew did. The cover-up, the callousness, the attempt to force a compromise, it is all tumbling out. Advaita?
Yes, could you repeat that question, Pranesh? I'm sorry, the audio wasn't very clear.
Sure. I am saying that look at the sequence of events. The eyewitness has now spoken to Times Now, and he says that even after he gave a written complaint of what he saw, his version was suppressed. So there was a deliberate attempt to not just bury what the complainant, the victim went through, but also what the eyewitness told the airline.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this was made evidently clear by the fact that the lady had to write directly to the Air India chairman to get some sort of response. I think what happened with her was exceedingly traumatic. You're speaking about someone who's a senior citizen. From what I've read, she's a foreigner. So she was clearly not very aware of the laws and what to do even on landing. And it seems she waited for half an hour, even post the flight, and no one approached her. So I think at every level, there was a desire to just wrap this up on board the flight as well and act like it never happened and make sure that the victim kept quiet. Unfortunately for the airline, that's not what happened because this woman was subjected to very deep trauma. See, this happens with women all the time. We're aware of that. But on a flight, 35,000 feet in the air, a 16-hour flight, you can't get away from the perpetrator. So not only was she stuck on that plane and in that space with him, but they actually made her confront him. I find that appalling. How could you make her confront him and force her to have a conversation that she was clearly not willing to have? You're compounding the trauma of this old lady. And that is, for me, is unforgivable. And of course, changing her seat, separating her physically from this man, or getting rid of him to the rear of the plane. What did they do to isolate him? What did they do to ensure that she was comfortable after being drenched in urine? Nothing. And that is unforgivable, and frankly, it's inhumane.
Dr. Bagai, we've been discussing this story over the last few days, and it is only a result of the sustained campaign that we've run on Times Now that authorities have actually taken action. Otherwise, this case was long buried. Nobody cared. But even now, while Shankar Mishra has been arrested, sent to judicial custody, no action against this callous crew.
Yeah. Good evening, Pranesh. Good evening, everyone. So just let me break it down into 4 quick parts. I think first is the person who is responsible. I think he's just kissed his career and his social life permanently goodbye, perhaps putting it into the urinal itself. He's going to be virtually unemployable. This is a completely deplorable, antisocial, voyeuristic act, highly condemnable. This is unacceptable drunken madness in the middle of a flight. He's violated every right, not only of co-passengers, but mainly of a senior citizen, and that too of a lady. And this is amounting to sexual harassment. Point number 2 is that the airline staff has been comprehensively failed on various accounts. So just let me enumerate a few. It is the responsibility of the airlines to protect the physical, mental, and psychological interest of all passengers in a flight. When we are entrusting our lives in an aeroplane, it is the responsibility of the airline staff to look after us. Point number 2, they did not recognize that this person is behaving or acting unruly. If you're having, let me tell you this medically, if you're having 4 drinks, and I presume they would be large drinks, that means in 45 minutes, this gentleman has consumed more than 250 ml, this is going to precipitate unruly behavior. He will have no sense of control or judgment. Point number 3, they did not change the seat of the lady, and they did not restrain this man who has behaved completely in a bizarre manner. They did not report this incident at the time when it happened to the pilot or at the time when the flight landed. This gentleman who has behaved in such a bizarre manner should have been arrested. Last 2 quick points is that when you are talking of a person who is so intoxicated that he can urinate in the middle of a flight, that also on another person who's a lady, a senior citizen, that person can also behave in other aberrant manners. It is unpredictable. If you're keeping the lady in the same seat and the man back on his seat, that too on a wet seat which is full of urine, that man could have behaved apart from this in any other physical harm-causing manner. What was done by the airlines to prevent that? And last, most importantly, is the recent study which has shown just last week that 96% of sewage samples in aircrafts over the last 1 year, that is urine and fecal matter, contain COVID virus, which is SARS-CoV-2. It is transmitted even through urine.
Right.
Why on earth will an airline make a lady who's drenched in urine sit on a urine-filled seat again? This is completely unacceptable. And I think if you ask me, if the airline says we are number 1 airline, the pun intended, yes, they are number 1 airline.
Now, Shailesh Gandhi, before I bring you in, sir, we've also opened our call-in line, sir. We want to hear from our viewers. And let's, take a few before I come to you. Deepak Sood is now joining us. He's calling us from Bengaluru. Sir, good evening. You're on Times Now. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to tell you one thing. I wanted to find out, Mr. Bhattacharya, who was his neighbor, who was sitting just next to the concerned gentleman, did he not have the guts or the gall to get up and help the lady instead of asking for his 2 minutes of fame on TV? What is the point? Yes, we're taking action against the airline. We've taken action against the staff. We've done everything possible. But would he not be able to get up and help the lady at that point in time instead of waiting to write a letter? Has he not got that kind of a gall of guts instead of waiting to see that everything happens in front of his eyes? That is sad. I mean, that is very, 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 very sad to hear that a gentleman of that nature just sits and watches. It's like somebody getting murdered in front of him, and he watches, and later on he writes a letter. Yes, I was present. It is my duty to write a letter, but not get up and help somebody. That is very, very sad. Yes,
I understand the point you're making, Mr. Sood, but, when we asked him this question, he said that he had alerted the crew, and the crew did not do anything. The captain took more than 1.5 hours, to be precise, actually 2 hours, to intervene. But that's a point that we'll talk about. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. Mr. Srinivas is now joining us from Bengaluru. Sir, good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Actually, thank you for having me on the show. There are 2 things which has not been discussed so far. Number 1 is, unfortunately, Mr. Tata, along with the crores of rupees of debt, has also an added debt of these self-empowered and inefficient staff, which he has to deal with, unfortunately. Second thing is, we have to salute Mr. Tata, who actually took action. And in the Tata group, I have many contacts there, and I have this one. They don't tolerate this. So we have to salute him also. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. O.P. Swaminathan is joining us from Bengaluru. Sir, good evening.
Yeah, Pranesh, good evening. I have got a few points. One is, the co-pilot said that he is not empowered to take a decision to allot her to first class. It is the captain who has to take the decision, and he was sleeping. It is an emergency. You could have gone and woken up the captain. If there was a hijack, will you keep quiet for the captain to sleep? It's atrocious. And the second thing is, the employer has sacked him. I would prefer if the employer also writes an apology letter for employing such a pervert in his company, and whether he has had such issues in his companies earlier.
Right.
The third thing is, the pilot and the crew in that particular class, business class, they should be grounded, and not an internal inquiry. Independent inquiry should be conducted, and if found guilty, the pilot's license should be revoked.
But what is the airline waiting for? That's the question. That's the question, Mr. Swaminathan. You know, all very well put by you. Vivek Naidu is now joining us from Mumbai. Yes, sir. Good evening.
Yeah, hi, good evening. My direct question, and only one question, is what was Mr. Chandrasekharan doing the moment he received the email from the victim lady until 4th of January? Until this whole truth came out in the press, in the social media, we heard absolutely nothing from the top management of the Tata Group. I think the entire episode has been covered up until the shit hit the ceiling. And the question that must be asked by the Ministry of Civil Aviation to Mr. Chandrasekhar is, what action did he take once he received the email from the lady? Did he himself comply with the law of the land? That is all I have to ask.
Sure, it'll all come out as investigation continues. But Mr. Shailesh Gandhi, what is, you know, sir, I mean, what is your, I'm really actually at a loss of words. I mean, what do I ask you? I am just shocked by the things that are coming out. What is your assessment of what happened here? Multiple lapses, many levels.
It is evidently Air India's horrific loss. It is intolerable, and as various people have used various adjectives, I will not repeat them. But the fact is, somebody was telling me that DGCA is issuing some guidelines. What guidelines will do? It's a matter of common sense. If the crew and the pilot do not have common sense, then this is completely unacceptable. I mean, even if in a school, if a little boy of 6 had gone and done such a deed in a class, it would be considered as horrific. In an airline, which is supposed to be a very different class of things, if this happens and there is no action taken, I think the minimum that the Air India should do is to suspend the crew and the pilot of this plane. It's horrible that this was not brought in. It is bringing shame to India, shame to Air India, and this is something completely unacceptable. I think unless strict action is taken, it shows up our Indian lack of ability to punish people for wrongdoing. This is something which is terrible. It is a larger reflection on the country and on the airlines.
Absolutely. Now, Captain Sanjay Karve, I'm coming to you next, sir. But before that, let me bring in our viewers. Rishi is now joining us from New Delhi. Sir, good evening. You're on Times Now. Please go ahead.
Yes, good evening. Firstly, this incident is absolutely appalling, shocking, unheard of, and reprehensible. And I mean, the onus is completely on the airline, and I don't see how the person was not arrested and how could he have gone home after landing. And someone did mention about the witness. I think we should give him the benefit of the doubt, because within his right, he informed the airline and he was proactive. So I would just like to say that.
Right.
That we should not blame the...
Indra Kapoor is on the line. Mr. Kapoor, good evening, sir. You're on Times Now.
Good evening. A lot has been said about the role of airline people, Air India. But here, the most pathetic question is the role of co-passengers. Everybody was mute. Everybody was a spectator to the harsh treatment being meted out to the poor lady. Where we are drifting, where our moral ethics have gone, what we are doing. We need introspection as a passenger, as a human being, as an Indian. We need introspection. This is my suggestion. This is my plea.
Right. Thank you. Captain Ajay Pillai is now joining us from Chennai. Captain, good evening. Go ahead.
Good evening, sir. My limited view on this is that as horrible as the incident is, the least that the airline crew could have done is made them exchange their seats, so that this person who carried out this hideous act could have sat in his own urine.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Khan is now joining us from Bengaluru. Sir, good evening. Go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. I would like to keep my point very limited and very short. This is something which has just been mentioned by another caller. what exactly were the other passengers doing in the first place? Now, we all know here that this particular act, this very reprehensible act of urination upon another person is not going to get over in a couple of seconds. And surely it is not the seat surely may not have been very secluded or something of that sort. I'm sure there would have been many witnesses, many other passengers. And did nobody have the guts to get up and prevent this atrocious action? I'm appalled at the behavior of the co-passengers.
Okay, let's have that addressed. If Captain Sanjay Karve, if you could, take that question and give us a sense of, what could have really happened. How did the other passengers miss this?
This is primarily because we as passengers, we feel that it is the airline's job. It is not my job. Why should I get into any police inquiry, police complaints? I am already flying 16 hours on the flight. I don't want to get delayed after landing at Delhi. I am going to spend another 2 hours. But here the point to note is there are 3 issues, which I heard just now. The cabin crew in charge in a flight is within her rights to move the passenger to a first class seat and then inform the pilot in command. Secondly, the co-pilot says that he has no authority. All this 777s and 747s fly with 2 sets of crew. There is always a qualified pilot on board inside the cockpit. The co-pilot should have asked him. And if there was no qualified pilot inside the cockpit, the co-pilot de facto is the captain of the aircraft, and he should have exercised his authority and moved the lady into the first class. And the DGCA has mandated aviation security courses, which all aircrew, the pilots and the cabin crew undergo once in 2 years. There is a specific chapter in that course which deals with how to handle unruly passengers. So I am surprised no action has been taken against that particular passengers on board the flight.
So
the cabin crew is totally at fault.
No action has been taken for so long, and no action has been taken against the crew. So that's even more shocking. Swapnil Kothari, so much has been talked about this case, so much has been written about this case, but people are just not being able to, wrap their head around what actually prevented the crew from taking action. I mean, why was this so difficult for them?
And the training manual
Pranesh, I think the first and foremost thing that anybody should have done on a humanitarian ground was to give a first class seat to the lady. That's one. Number 2 is that they should not have...
Advaita, are you saying something?
What? Top pay?
Hello? Yeah. So,
okay. Sorry, Swapnil. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, Pranesh, the first thing, as I said, they should have done is to give a first class seat. Secondly, that they should have done is not to strike out a compromise between the two, at least at the time whilst they were on the plane. Then once they are out of the plane, they can say that you guys do whatever you want to do. But before that, we would like to detain this man. Whether or not the lady agrees to it, the airline crew should have detained the man, then let the police come in and then let the 3 of them sort it out between themselves. And the airline then on its own can do whatever it wants to do with its own pilot, with its own crew. That is as per the DGCA. What I find most reprehensible in this entire scenario is the fact that that man was very, very keen to ensure that he tries to strike a compromise, etc., and all of those things. And the thing is that once you strike a compromise, or you want to strike a compromise as far as that point is concerned, that means you are somewhere trying to dilute your own act. Now, that is entirely a legal scenario. Once that legal scenario comes into play, then as to how the trial takes place, that's a separate issue altogether. What is going to be the key as far as Pranesh this is concerned is that if at all it goes to trial, which I'm sure it will, unless there is an out-of-court settlement, once the media glare gets out of it, is that there is going to be eyewitnesses, whether the same eyewitness who's there on your channel right now, whether he's going to come there and give an eyewitness. Because if there is no eyewitness at that point in time, then it becomes a case of he says, she says. And that is what I don't like. And that is something which I find, very hard if we are trying to ensure that such a kind of an act is not repeated by anybody. Now, one of the other things that I would like to mention for the benefit of your viewers is that you will have to rewrite the manual, the airline manual, Pranesh. As far as this is concerned, there has to be some sort of a stricture, some sort of a stringency. The United Kingdom has something of £5,000 and some imprisonment. United States has got $11,000. And what do we have for the cabin crew and all of those things? Is just some sort of a suspension.
Okay. Is it time to rewrite the manual? Amir Singh Pasrij, has the time come to look at it?
To be done, Pranesh.
I don't think our laws are actually insufficient. We have a fair amount of strong laws. We have provisions of the aircraft rules which deal with such episodes. This particular episode was wrongly categorized by the crew as something that they wanted to just push under the carpet, and that was a big mistake. It's called a level 2 episode, so the passenger gets barred from travel for at least 6 months. And I know the press is pointing out rightly that it's disgusting. I agree, it's disgusting. But these kind of things happen quite often. Lots of episodes happen often in the airlines which are brushed under the carpet. And I think they were wrong because they didn't realize the magnitude of it. And one of the excellent examples given by one of your callers was, why don't you swap seats with the person who did what he did? That was an easy solution. But outside of that solution, once you get into the law, firstly, you require permission of the central government for some of these offences before you can take them forward. The prosecution requires a permission. Secondly, under the aircraft rules, you don't require permission, but the offences are less strict because only rules 23 and 24 come into it. There's a rule 29A which really relates to endangering the aircraft. And from what I've heard, of course, he was drunk enough, but anyone drunk enough doesn't necessarily endanger an aircraft. So if you haven't got evidence of him endangering the aircraft, the offences are relatively minor. So one of the possibilities which was brought out was that you should have stronger deterrents. I think that all that has happened as a consequence now will deter anyone from misbehaving on an aircraft. I think there'll be consequences which may go far beyond this episode itself. And I think the bigger thing to see is this reaction from the person who committed the crime or is alleged to have committed the crime, whereby he's now trying to attack the victim. It's become, a par for the course in India to,
I know, victim
once somebody
shaming,
does something wrong.
You're spot on. You're spot on, Mr. Pasrich. But the larger point that we're trying to, address here is, or at least trying to, discuss or underline, is that the man Shankar Mishra, the alleged urinator, call him what you want to, he is now been arrested. What about the crew that, and like you said, that, for the case to now proceed and for it to reach a logical conclusion, you will need evidence, and the crew actually did not help the cause. They could have helped the agencies collect evidence, but here they were on a spree to cover up things. So, April Kothari, you were wanting to say something.
Yeah, Pranesh, that's exactly the point, that who's going to come forward to give the eyewitness account. Now, I would very much appreciate if a co-passenger would come forward and assist in the case. Otherwise, it becomes a case of he says, she says. You know what I will do as a defense lawyer in this case? I'll say, yeah, I offered 15,000 for the discomfort that the woman felt when I dropped coffee and biscuits on her. So, just to use the time, the Economic Times limerick, which came a couple of days ago, that there was a man on a plane who had too much of a champagne. It was not from a bar. The guy went a little bit too far. And when he something, Pranesh, this incident happened in Indigo also somewhere, some similar incident which I read somewhere. I don't remember now exactly. And, unless and until, I don't want the media to come and catch attention and throw light upon this and put pressure. And then things happen. This should happen on its own. This will happen only
on
when
its
the
own, but
laws
it
are
didn't happen. Advaita Kala, what do you think is the reason that emboldens the airline to not take action? What is this mindset?
Again, I'm having audio issues, Pranesh. I'm so sorry. If you could
I'm only asking you, Advaita Kala, that what is this mindset that emboldens the airline to, brush this under the carpet or to dismiss this as some, minor incident?
Can't hear you. Apologies.
Okay, I think we'll try and fix that line with you, but let's hear our viewers who've been patiently holding on to the phone line. Bhavna is joining us from Pune. Ma'am, good evening. Sorry to keep you waiting. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Hi. Hi, good evening. And I'd like to tell you that I've flown as an air hostess in my heydays, and therefore I'm very well versed with the rules. So firstly, the incident is appalling. It's really bad. It shouldn't have happened. And I also find it strange that the co-passengers, nobody stood up for the lady. They should have. But then they can also feel that probably like they're intervening and they may be asked to sit back by the crew. But the main thing is that the crew did not act. Let's be very, very serious. Why should the crew not act? Why did the captain not give a seat? So in my opinion, if the offender is wrong, equally wrong is the crew on board.
Okay.
And I think they must be imprisoned, because you can't let things like this happen.
Right.
Safety of the passengers is the first duty. Like when there's an emergency evacuation.
Absolutely, and the buck stops with the pilot. What was he doing? He was not drunk, or was he? We don't know. The passenger was drunk. Was the pilot also drunk? The co-pilot was drunk. The crew was drunk. All of them. They were drinking from the passenger quota of the liquor. I don't know what the policy is. Or are they also allowed in-flight liquor? I mean, what was going on? Sharmila is now joining us from Mumbai. Ma'am, good evening. Please go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for having me on your show. I agree on all points said recently by all your panel. I have a question. The gentleman who was sitting next to the urinator, as they call him, has come on TV, and yes, he's the only eyewitness, which is amazing. By the time this has happened, between an hour or so, how come none of the other business class passengers were not awake? We live in a country like India where everything is videoed today. I mean, Thai Airways just now recently had a fight on the plane. There was a video taken and went viral. How come nobody has taken a video of this? First of all. Secondly, this passenger who was sitting next to the urinator has definitely tried to help this lady who is as old as this urinator's mother. I don't know why he even would have thought of doing something so disgusting. But the fault here completely lies not in a man who's drunk and done such an obscene act, but on the captain of this flight. He is called a captain for a reason. He is called a captain to take decisions on what is happening on his flight. He doesn't even come to this business class lounge to check what has happened. He doesn't suggest that this lady maybe should be sitting in this Shankar's seat or not given a first class ticket. At the end of the day, she was a business class passenger. Even if she was an economy passenger and this had happened, if there was any seat available on the flight, they should have given her that.
You know, the most crucial point that you've made, Sharmila ji, about, the captain taking responsibility, and it is for a reason that he's called the captain and the buck stops with him. That's really the most fundamental question. Advaita Kala, I hope you can hear me now. I was asking you, trying to ask you about the mindset that emboldens the airline to not take action in a case like this. What emboldens them?
That you're trapped at 35,000 feet. You're at the complete mercy of the crew and the captain. There's nothing you can do. You have no agency, nothing. She's got the elderly lady had no relatives with her, nobody to advise her. There was one good Samaritan who was the co-passenger, who's willing, I must add, to come and give his testimony, or not be able to come because he's in the US, but definitely cooperate with the investigation. But basically, this is tacit bullying. Because there was nothing she could do. She was trapped on that plane, and these were the people who were supposed to guide her and help her. Instead, they chose to manipulate her. And post the flight also. Why didn't the captain come and meet her post the flight? Why was she sitting on her own for half an hour? Imagine she's elderly, she's a foreigner. How out of her depth must she have been in this situation? Where is the empathy? Airlines is a service industry as well. It's not just about taking people from point A to point B.
Not just that. No.
Sad.
While I understand the empathy bit, this is about their duty. This is part of their duty. Forget the empathy for a minute. This was their duty. It is well laid out.
And the SOPs.
Absolutely.
Operation procedures, whether it's a
multiple norms flouted. And let's hear from our viewers. Vikrant is now joining us from Mumbai. Sir, good evening.
Quick points to make.
Yes, sir.
The crew of business class and the pilot and the co-pilot should be deroasted till the inquiry. If found guilty, they should be removed from their job permanently. Secondly, the father of Mr. Mukesh, whoever that Mishra is, he's trying to blackmail that lady. He's trying to put up a narration that the lady is blackmailing. Even the father should be booked across for spreading a false narrative.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Dr. Ramki Muruga is now joining us. Good evening, Doctor. You're on Times Now. You're calling us from Chennai. Please go ahead. I think we've lost that line with Dr. Muruga, but Mr. Sharma is now joining us from Chennai. Sir, if you can hear me, please go ahead. Okay, let's go to Mr. PK Subramaniam. He's calling us from Mumbai. Sir, you're on Times Now.
PK Subramaniam,
yes,
speaking
sir.
from Navi Mumbai. It is a clear case of negligence by Air India, no doubt about it. Yes.
Yes, we can hear you, sir. Please reduce the volume of your television set and make your point.
Yeah, it is a clear case of negligence by Air India. An airline like Air India cannot act in this way. I am very much disappointed. And this man should be banned to travel from other airlines also immediately.
That's right. This 30-day token ban is just an eyewash. I mean, he'll be very happy even if you ban him for 60 days. That is 2 months. Shailesh Gandhi, is this enough? This token action against the passenger that the DGCA has taken is 1 month ban. And on the other hand, you have no action against the crew that allowed this to happen.
The entire way in which this is being handled by all the official channels, including Air India and DGCA, is they are making it into a frivolous kind of thing. This is not a frivolous action. This is a very serious default and must be punished accordingly and must be expedited. The crew and the pilot, as others have said also, should be suspended immediately and dismissed if there is culpability found. The passenger, I believe he's been arrested now, but under what charges has he been arrested has not been disclosed. They should disclose the charges, and at least outraging the modesty of a woman is a very serious charge which can be levied on him.
Right, that charge has, I think, been slapped, and Swapnil Kothari will elaborate on the charges that have been slapped. Yes, Mr. Kothari.
Yeah, Pranesh, Mr. Gandhi, 354, outraging the modesty of the woman, 294, Obscene Act, 509, once again, word or gesture, Obscene Act, 510, drunken misbehavior in a public place. These are the 4 sections that have been slapped by the Delhi police as far as to the best of my knowledge. And I think those 4 sections are sufficient, more importantly 354 and 509, because 510 is drunken misbehavior is something that people can be let off with some sort of a reprimand. But I think 354 is something which merits a sentence unless this matter is settled out of court. And Pranesh, my only concern is that I believe that the show cause notice has been sent now. 2 days back, there was some sort of a statement made by the CEO of the airline company saying that, yes, it is repulsive, it is a revulsion. The woman would have gone revulsion, had revulsion. And I was there with Rahul Shiv Shankar yesterday, and this is what was some sort of a platitude. But today, I think today morning, it's been changed, and it's saying that the airline could have handled it a bit better. So now it's coming to admission. And I'm glad that it is coming to some sort of an admission that, because only, Pranesh, when you admit that there has been a lapse, then you see, you go on a course correction. So I believe that,
when will that course correction come in, Dr. Bagai? What should be done to do 2 things? One, to set a deterrent, and the other, to reassure the passengers.
Yeah, Pranesh, a couple of quick points. One is, from the airline point of view, I think the senior most officials should visit the lady and from the airline point of view, give a personal apology. I think at the end of the day, all of us are human beings, and I think we should reach out to the index person, whichever part of the world she may be in the present moment. And also apologize, not only for not doing anything, apologize for taking no action for the last month or month and a half. And the second point is the drunken passenger who has now been arrested. I think a couple of months or 1 month ban is completely ridiculous. It's putting salt into the wounds. This gentleman should be banned for at least 5 or 10 years from all flights, period. And let him face the law, let him face the music. I'm sure he'll enjoy the urinals in the jail a lot more than what he has subjected other passengers to.
Now, Captain Karve, if you were part of some panel, what advice would you give to DGCA or to Air India about action that can be taken to set a deterrent against the crew that allowed this, sir?
What I'm surprised is DGCA is really not involved. DGCA has set down rules and regulations for the crew to adhere to. It mandates regular courses to be done. So every crew is subjected to these courses. Now, if the crew is not following that, that is where DGCA needs to step in and temporarily suspend the license of the entire set of crew who are operating that flight. The first person I would blame is the co-pilot who washed his hands off saying that it is not my job or I do not have the authority. It is the authority of the pilot in command. He should be the first person. Then cabin crew in charge, who is in charge of all the cabin crew. She should be the next person responsible. She should be questioned. The DGCA airline has de-rostered them. De-roster has really got no meaning. It just means that you are not flying for next 10 days or 15 days till the time the inquiry is over. What the DGCA needs to do is suspend the licenses till the time the inquiry is over and then act according to the Air Act.
Advaita Kala, what action would you like to see against the crew, against the airline?
Bottom line is, I think the bottom line is that there are going to be different levels of culpability when it comes to the crew. And I think we have to take a nuanced approach when it comes to that. Your cabin crew did, according to, the gentleman who, the co-passenger who you had on your channel, he said that the two ladies did extremely, did what they could within the options that were made available to them. So I think the buck really stops with the person in charge of that flight, which is the captain. Now, what was the big deal? They do upgrades all the time. What was the big deal in sending this lady into first class so she at least had a comfortable trip? It is the most basic thing that could have been done, and it was not done because for some reason he decided that she should continue to sit in a urine-soaked chair, covered with a blanket, if you please. Let's see if that's comfortable for anybody. So I think one has to kind of take a nuanced approach on this. And really the airline has a lot to answer to, but I want to credit the media for highlighting this because guess what? Women do take flights. And this cannot keep happening on different airlines. I'm glad that this has been made a public spectacle. I'm glad that they are being taken to task in such a public way.
Let's see what action follows. It's already, too late. Very little has been done. Let's see what more follows, and let's give the last word on the show to our viewers. Three quick viewers who joining us. Mr. DMK Sharma from Chennai. Sir, go ahead. Good evening.
Hello.
Yes, sir. You're on Times Now. We can hear you. Go ahead, sir. Make your point.
Yeah. I'm speaking from Hyderabad. I just received a message from one of my friends in USA that Wells Fargo, the employers of this offender, have terminated his services.
That's
Why
right.
Why can't we do such things to our own people? Unless we do this like Wells Fargo did, people will misuse their power.
Right. The airline should take a leaf out of what the company has done and set an example. Mr. Natarajan from Chennai is on the show. Sir, good evening. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, a person, whoever is taking a drink, four drinks within 45 minutes, there is every possibility he could not be able to control his urine. Probably he has waited and before going to the bathroom, it split off. That's all. The matter is, even the lady who got affected, she has forgiven her. But does it fit for this 400 media channels, trial of media channels? I don't think it is necessary. It is not a big thing.
No, this is no public trial, sir. We are only trying to sensitize people. I mean, you know, would you be saying this if this happened to you or your family member? I don't think so. So, you know, let's not, while you're entitled to what you're saying, and I respect your views, what is important is that we must expose the callousness and lapses on multiple levels. And, you know, it's more than the liquor. It is about the laxity. That needs to be addressed. Mr. Vinod is now joining us from Delhi. Sir, good evening.
Sir, good evening. Actually, I just want to say that the confidence that I as a traveler have on the crew has been seriously dented by this episode. Because if we have heard of stories of crew standing up for even small things to save the passenger, to even help the passenger out in times of security issues and all those things. This event could have actually an unruly passenger could be a threat to the security of the aircraft also, and for the other passengers as well. So I don't know how the crew stood silent and did not do anything.
Right.
So it kind of seriously dents my confidence actually on the crew.
I can understand completely, which is why I said, sir, we must take steps to reassure the passenger confidence. And our hashtag is punish this cover up. All the people who are involved in this must be taken to task. Captain Sanjay Karve, Amir Singh Pasreet, Swapnil Kothari, Advaita Kala, Dr. Bagai, and Shailesh Dandia. I thank all of you for your time. Thank you for speaking to us and for putting this in context for our viewers. Let's see what action follows. We are following this closely. Thanks for watching.